Long ago, there was a strange deception. A wolf dressed in frills, a kind of transvestite. But I get ahead of my story. In the beginning, there was just Little Red Riding Hood.
You are listening to Two Friends, Two Poems, the podcast where friends read poems to each other just to see what happens. My name's Tom. This was my idea, and today is a special Three Friends episode as we're joined by Atlanta artist Paige Adair. We get into some poetry by Sexton and Sylvia Plath. Just a warning that one of these poems does include a description of self-harm. All right, these navels aren't going to gaze at themselves. Let's start the show. When did you first read this poem and like it?
I think I was in grad school when I picked this specific book of her work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on things that centered around like the subversiveness in fairy tales. And these made them more overtly so, and I made animations based on these poems. Many are the deceivers, the suburban matron, proper in the supermarket, list in hand so she won't suddenly fly, buying her dozen chuck wagon dog food, meanwhile ascending from earth, letting her stomach fill up with helium, letting her arms go loose as kite tails, getting ready to meet her lover a mile down Applecrest Road in the Congregational Church parking lot. Two seemingly respectable women come up to an old Jenny and show her an envelope full of money and promise to share the booty if she'll give them 10 thou as an act of faith. Her life savings are under the mattress, covered with rust stains. And counting. They are as wrinkled as prunes, but negotiable. The two women take the money and disappear. Where is the moral? Not all knives are for stabbing the exposed belly. Rock climbs on rock, and it only makes a seashore. Old Jenny has lost her belief in mattresses, and now she has no wastebasket in which to keep her youth. The stand-up comic on The Tonight Show, who imitates the vice president and cracks up Johnny Carson and delays sleep for millions of bedfellows watching between their feet, slits his wrist in the next morning. In the Algonquin's old-fashioned bathroom, the razor in his hand like a toothbrush, wall as anonymous as a urinal, the shower curtain his slack rubber band audience, and then the slash, as simple as an opening letter, and the warm blood breaking out like a rose upon the bathroom with its claw and ball feet. And I too, quite collected at cocktail parties. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm undergoing open-heart surgery. The heart, poor little fellow, pounding on his tin drum with a faint death beat. The heart, the eyeless beetle, the enormous than Kafka beetle, running panicked through his maze, never stopping 1 foot after the other, 1 hour after the other, until he gags over an apple, and it's all over. And I too again, I built a summer house on Cape Ann, a simple A-frame, and this too was a deception. Nothing haunts a new house. When I moved in with a bathing suit and tea bags, the ocean rumbled like a train backing up. At each window, secrets came in like gas. My mother, that departed soul, sat in my Eames chair and reapproached me for losing the keys to the old cottage. Even in the electric kitchen, there was the smell of a journey. The ocean was sleeping through its frontiers and laying me out on its wet rails. The bed was stale with my childhood, and I could not move to another city where the worthy makes a new life. On her way in the big wood, Red Riding Hood met the wolf. "Good day, Mr. Wolf," she said, thinking him no more dangerous than a streetcar or a panhandler. He asked where she was going, and she obligingly told him. There among the roots and the trunks, with the mushrooms pulsing inside the moss, he planned how to eat them both. The grandmother, an old carrot, and the child, a shy budkin, in a red hood. He bade her to look at the blood-rot, the small bunchberry, and the dog-tooth, and pick some of them for her grandmother, and this she did. Meanwhile, he scamped off to grandmother's house and ate her up as quick as a slap. Then he put on her nightcap and snuggled down into the bed, a deceptive fellow. Red Riding Hood knocked on the door and entered with her flowers, her cake, her wine. Grandmother looking strange, a dark, hairy, diseased, it seemed. Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have! Ears, eyes, hands, and then the teeth. The better to eat you with, my dear. So the wolf gobbled Red Riding Hood down like a gumdrop, and now he was fat. He appeared to be in his 9th month, and Red Riding Hood and her grandmother rode like two Jonahs up and down with his every breath, one pigeon, one partridge. He was fast asleep, dreaming in his cap and gown, wolfless. Along came a huntsman who heard the loud, contented snores and knew that it was no grandmother. He opened the door and said, "So it's you, old sinner." He raised his gun to shoot when it occurred to him that maybe the wolf had eaten up the old lady, so he took a knife and began cutting open the sleeping wolf, a kind of cesarean section. It was a carnal knife that let Red Riding Hood out like a poppy, quite alive from the kingdom of the belly, and grandmother too, still waiting for cakes and wine. The wolf, they decided, was too mean to simply be shot, so they filled his belly with stones and sewed him up. He was as heavy as a cemetery, and when he woke up and tried to run off, he fell over dead, killed by his own weight. Many a deception ends on such a note. The huntsman and the grandmother and Red Riding Hood sat down by his corpse and had a meal of wine and cake, those two remembering nothing naked and brutal from that little death, from that little birth, from their going down and their lifting up.
Holy moly. Oh.
That is so great. The chicken blood. Red is chicken blood.
Mm-hmm. I like how the author sets up, like goes back and forth between saying something comforting and then something horrifying. So what was the line right before chicken blood?
Oh, a Swiss flag, which
A Swiss
is
flag.
neutral. Like, to me,
Mm-hmm.
it symbols neutrality.
It was her Linus blanket. Besides, it was red as the Swiss flag. Yes, it was red as red as chicken blood.
She like punches you like that. She's like, "Hey, don't worry, everything will be okay." And then there's a knife. Like with, do you think I'm not familiar with your work at all, Paige, but
Yeah.
Without, like, how do the confessional poets impact it or not impact it, or?
You know, that is a really good question. That it's something we were talking about yesterday. This idea of like coding your personal narrative into your work. And I think it's something that I do, but when if I sat down with you and talked you through a piece of work, I don't know that I would share the personal narrative part of it, even though it's kind of like filtered in there. And I think these poems kind of do that as well. When you said poetry to me, like this is the first, like this genre is like the first thing I think of. So it was fun for me to kind of come back to it and see how my own work has changed since kind of putting it down and having it kind of be this thing in my orbit. You know, I think you know, you have all these tools and they just stay in your orbit and they kind of come back to you when you need them.
This poem jumped out at me just really because of the title, because we've had a through line of trees, you know. So this poem is called Elm. I know the bottom, she says. I know it with my great taproot. It is what you fear. I do not fear it. I have been there. Is it the sea you hear in me, its dissatisfactions, or the voice of nothing? That was your madness? Love is a shadow. How you lie and cry after it. Listen, these are its hooves. It has gone off like a horse. All night I shall gallop thus, impetuously, till your head is a stone, your pillow a little turf, echoing, echoing. Or shall I bring you the sound of poisons? This is rain now, this big hush. And this is the fruit of it, tin white, like arsenic. I have suffered the atrocity of sunsets, scorched to the root, my red filaments burn and stand a hand of wires. Now I break up in pieces that fly about like clubs. A wind of such violence will tolerate no bystanding. I must shriek. The moon also is merciless. She would drag me cruelly, being barren. Her radiance scathes me. Or perhaps I have caught her. I let her go. I let her go, diminished and flat as after radical surgery. How your bad dreams possess and endow me. I am inhabited by a cry. Nightly it flaps out, looking with its hooks for something to love. I am terrified by this dark thing that sleeps in me. All day I feel its soft, feathery turnings, its malignity. Clouds pass and disperse. Are those the faces of love, those pale irretrievables? Is it for such I agitate my heart? I am incapable of more knowledge. What is this face so murderous in its strangle of branches? Its snaky acids hiss. It petrifies the will. These are the isolate, slow faults that kill, that kill, that kill.
How do you read so well? Do you have tips for our listener?
His voice is very calming.
So you're like, I always love
Have a
listening
dad in broadcasting. I don't know.
to.
Yeah,
I always love hearing actors read.
I do too. It's like it's funny. Like I love. I think that's one reason That's one huge reason I love doing this, because it's like it's still satisfying that, you know. I still love reading out loud. I just don't, you know. Why do I have to put on tights to do
Well, you know, of course, people can't see you right now with the tights.
it? Well,
You can put on tights.
no, I just, yeah, it's like I'm not
You
sure I
don't
want to.
have to. You could.
The word
Being
feathery. Why the word?
feathery, yeah.
There's a lot of words that stand out in there, but
So many in this one that just like when I read it, it just cut me in the best way. Where was feathery?
Closer to the end.
Oh yeah, I'm terrified. Yeah, dude. Oh, that's the one that I think got me and both. Paul, you mentioned this line as well. I am terrified by this dark thing that sleeps in me. All day I feel its soft, feathery turnings.
feathery.
To use the
I would
word
have gone with like
feathery,
needles.
yeah, I exactly. It's like it takes what when I just think of the word feathery, it's pleasant,
Mm-hmm.
it's light, but to make it a description of a dark thing that sleeps in me. It makes it so much more crafty and subtle, you know?
Yeah, like that dark thing that sleeps in you is something that also like lulls you to sleep or comforts
Mhm,
you,
mhm.
and that's
Tricks you.
it tricks you. It's so true too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
You can sit
All right.
there all day long and ring the dinner bell, and we'll all eat together, inspired by the breeze. We'll sing a song of gratitude under the ancient